But we can mitigate the effect of change by talking about it and raising the necessary platforms, the necessary framework to make sure that the transfer of power in this country does not collapse the state. That's our desire, because state collapse is preceded by failure of transitions. And when the state collapses, it can collapse on everybody. It will collapse on national dreams at independence. It will collapse on the dreams and aspirations of our children and grandchildren. And as a people, a well-informed people, relating and reflecting on our checkered political history, we have every reason to say that it's important to have a conversation on how a transition can happen. And that transition does not target an individual. And that's the biggest worry, that whenever I talk about the transition, your eyes, you are leaving a space to fill a name. And we are talking about government transition. In that government transition, there are names, not a name. It can be a party and the individuals therein, or an individual. Because I'm very sure even within the ruling party, probably there is a bit of fear to speak about an internal transition. If there is internal fear in the NRM, there should not be a fear at the national level. We should speak about the transition as a people. That we allow parties to manage their own internal transition without our own interference. But it's our business, sir, to interfere and discuss the national transition. It's not my business to discuss the transition in the NRM or any other party. No, that's not my business. My business is to discuss the transition in the nation at large. So the whole idea of the transition is to avert a possible state collapse, because nobody can survive it. You can survive it physically, but it can impair and disable very potent dreams from across. The second issue, Honorable Chair, relates to reforms, electoral reforms. Some people prefer to call them government reforms. Now, reforms, some of the reforms, it seems to take a twofold. Some are legislative reforms, others are administrative reforms. Okay? And we have provided an outline of the nature of key reforms, electoral, stroke political reforms that will require legislative reform. On page 4 of this little document, there is an outline of the nature of reforms that we want to see. Under the title of Objectives of the National Transition and Reform Agenda, we have provided the nature, why the reforms are there, to ensure key constitutional, electoral, administrative reforms are effected before the next election, to ensure conduct of non-violent, free, fair, credible, verifiable, and consequential elections, to buttress mechanisms that guarantee peaceful and smooth transfer of power from one leader to another, to implement a deliberate process of demilitarizing politics and elections, to campaign for the implementation of a national reconciliation and a reparation program, to call for the review of the national objectives and active principles of state policy as mechanisms of guaranteeing continuity, peace, stability, shared progress, and prosperity for all Ugandans, to push for emergency national economic rescue program, to campaign for review of national foreign policy. Now, those are the objectives of our intended reform program. Now, in the subsequent, on the same page, we are listing the stakeholders in this conversation, and political parties form number 1. That's our recognition of the importance of this platform. Okay? And on page 5, there's a clear outline on the key agenda for the reforms, to amend key constitutional, electoral, and legislative reforms, national reconciliation. I don't have to bother with this, but importantly, on the same page, the nature of legislations that we want to change. Constitutional Amendment Act, the National Transition and Reconciliation Act, the Presidential Elections Act, the Presidential Privileges and Immunities Act, the National Devolution Act, the Proportional Representation and National Electoral Systems Act. We believe these should be new legislations. And we expound a bit on these in other documents we shall share, but clearly speaking, on the Constitution, we have made proposals which have taken to Parliament in 8 bills. Probably you allow me to share a file with you as chairperson of this forum, which can be duplicated for the benefit of the parties. The 8 bills I have put before Parliament that have so far been encumbered, I should state here without a fear of contradiction, that they have been encumbered by fear of the unknown. You know? Fear of the unknown is actually that people fear to discuss what they do not know, even when it will happen to them. You know? And that's a problem for leaders, fearing to discuss issues before them, because they fear that when they discuss them, they will happen. But the nature is such that even when you do not discuss a matter, and that matter must happen, it does actually happen. So my 8 bills are gathering dust.
So failing to make a will does not...
It does not prevent death. No, you got me so well. So probably sometimes you must accept to discuss the matters that you feel are so constrained to your spirit, because they must happen anyway. So these legislations, fresh ones, we believe are important. I'll give an example of the nature of amendment. I'll give you an example of the Devolution Act. I pick number 5. Is there anybody in disagreement with the fact that decentralization has not worked as envisaged? I think there is a general consensus that it has not worked as planned. So are we so disabled in our thinking that we cannot think anew on what can work? So we believe that there is need for a new conversation on how power can be devolved between the center and where the action takes place at the local levels. The other example, what their thinking is on a number of potential legislations that need to be changed before the next election, including those that have been spoken about in a multiplicity of constitutional challenges and Supreme Court decisions when the presidential outcomes were challenged from 2006, 2011, and 2016. The last one in which the Amama challenge. The Supreme Court issued out directives on what needs to be done. There's even a recent one from the High Court related to the voting of foreigners, Ugandans in the diaspora and prisoners. It's a 2021 decision. And the issue was very clear, said, no, for us, we serve what has been given to us. It's not our business to originate legislation. Now, chairperson, you have several courts on you, and that's a very good thing. You have the NSF court, you have a circuit court. Are there other courts? Many. Probably this conversation will benefit from not personal views, but from the views of the several courts that you bear. Because then the nation does not expect fear from us. The nation expects leadership from us. When you offer leadership, it does not take away the fact that you have fears as a human being, but then you must offer leadership. Okay. So when I was informed that you are the current leader, I said, now the chair is born by the right person. He must utilize his several courts to give this nation some guidance on, for example, what is the view from the several courts you bear on these subjects. We have made proposals and turned them into bills with my team to amend the Presidential Elections Act to cause so many changes, including one important one, how the election is declared. That has caused murmurs across corridors. I'll give you a very simple example. When a vote takes place in Masaka City, you declare the winner of Chimanya, Kabonera, and the Nyendo Mukungwe, and the woman MP. And you even give them certificates. You do not give a final certificate for the president. What's wrong? And you declare that the vote, I mean the DR form, or I mean the certificate you have offered to the MP elect is final. It can only be impeached by a court. But for the president, you say, a president will be in the Vijja Kulangirirwa, a Kampala. But you have the results. So we are making a very simple proposal that just like you declare an MP elected, so must you declare the winner of Masakasite at the presidency. And it's final. Such that there is no vote that crosses Ruera and it transfigurates to something new. That the time of declaring it, wherever, Nambo, Kololo, it has actually metamorphosed into something else. We are speaking to the principles of this forum. You have offered us a very beautiful document. I was scanning through 7 principles. One of them is a competent electoral system, credible, adequately resourced, body, a level playing field, quality representation. I think in doing that, we are strengthening the principles of this forum. What is the view, for example, of the mighty NRM party on some of these? Maybe you are not close to the capacity to give their views, but unfortunately you bear a court of the top organ of the ruling party, and you're chairing this forum. He has 4 courts.
No, it's number 4.
He's number 4. Yeah, that's very important. Yeah. It's not a mean feat. We have proposed amendments to the Presidential Elections Act to do something unpopular to the politicians, but popular to the masses, to downsize Parliament. I heard the President sometimes saying it's not wise to downsize Parliament because Parliament, wherever members come from, they represent various interests. I agree with him that interests are represented. But we also have a duty to build the nation. That duty cannot be relegated to any other people but the leaders in this country. But we have offered him a solution by downsizing Parliament and proposing a bicameral Parliament. Proposing an upper house with 39 MPs or senators. When you look at those senators we have proposed, they actually represent the original 39 districts of Uganda, in which every Ugandan sees themselves there. Then for the lower house, a single member, 2 members from every district. We believe that would go a long way, one, in ensuring that Parliament is manageable and less cost to the taxpayer, but it's also important, an upper house will enhance representation. But in the same process, because we want to enhance representation and not curtail representation, which is the core of Parliament, we have proposed an extra 50 members of Parliament to join the lower house by proportional representation, such that every party voted in Parliament has a chance to pick from the 50 on a proportional basis, depending on the percentage you score. So when you do that, and you think as a party you love the youth, you pick from the 50 from your number. If you love workers, you pick from that. In the long term, there are categories of members of Parliament who want to do away with the military, should completely get out of Parliament. So these are wide-ranging proposals I don't want to bring here, but I'm giving you an example of how we intend to reform Parliament. Of course, the Local Government Act must have of necessity be amended if you're going to cause devolution change. Our neighbors in Kenya went for advanced devolution. They even have a formula in their constitution on how to share resources from the center. So I've had some politicians telling citizens that they did not vote wisely, so they will not get services. I think that's unfortunate. In Kenya, regardless of how you voted, you will share in the national resources. And it should be upon you and the region you come from to mobilize more local revenue to grow your region. So we want to amend the Government Act. Now, we also want to amend the Political Parties Act. And this is important to this forum. When the political parties were restored, of course there was a lot of ambivalence and discontent in some circles as to their restoration and their intent. And we now know we need them because they are the engine of political maturity and evolution. Political parties give us leaders, they mobilize leaders, they train leaders, and they give the nation some sense of ideological orientation. Mr. Chairman, the current law is prohibitive of party arrangements that relate to working with others. The major inhibition therein is that in the current state, it's very difficult to register a meaningful coalition between parties. Whereas the law allows for coalitions to be formed, it is inhibitive of how they can function, because you cannot register a coalition and use the same symbol. If today I want to work with the DP in a coalition, we shall register it with the EC, but each will retain their symbol. I think retention of symbol should not be an internal mechanism between the parties. And a simple amendment to the Act, I'm very sure members here on this forum are well educated about what the Act says. We need to cause an amendment that will make it feasible and possible for parties to form a coalition, register it, and use one symbol. Because the essence of forming a political party is to contest for power, not to simply participate. So without such an opportunity, it's inherently difficult for a coalition of parties to have a big bite at a contest at the national level. Because
now, as of now, okay, when they make coalition, they remain as individual parties,
more or less,
but they flaunt one, of course, one candidate.
Yes.
But who is even constitutionally recognized as a coalition? Because as of now, it can only be something quirky, just because it's not. It cannot be.
It's a package of confusion. We are observing.
Even the candidate.
Yeah.
Oh, it means the party candidate. Even when you're in a coalition.
Even though it's fronted by
a coalition.
Oh, but you need to have. Yes, we've come up about 5 of our parties, and we are floating so and so.
Yes.
Much as Namata remains in his party,
Yeah.
but if they are floating so and so, they have even a single symbol